My husband's best friend pushed me out of my marriage while my husband has amnesia and played as his devoted caretaker. But I am finally putting an end to all of her delusions. My husband's best friend thought she could steal my life while he couldn't remember it. My husband Alex got into a car accident 6 months ago. Nothing too serious physically, but he hit his head pretty bad, and the doctors said he has partial amnesia. He remembers his childhood, his job, his friends, but the last 5 years are spotty. Sometimes he remembers our wedding, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he knows we bought this house together, sometimes he thinks he's still living in his old apartment. His best friend Chloe was at the hospital when he woke up. They've known each other since high school, and she was actually the one who introduced us 8 years ago at her birthday party. While he was recovering, she visited every single day. I was working 12-hour shifts to keep our insurance active and pay the mortgage, so I could only come in the evenings. She was there all day because she works from home doing some freelance graphic design stuff. After 2 weeks, Alex gets discharged and comes home. Chloe drives him because I'm at work. When I get home, she's still there, cooking in my kitchen. She says Alex was confused about where things were, so she's helping him get settled. Fine, whatever, he needs support. But then she starts coming over every morning. She says it's to make sure he takes his medication and doesn't get confused. She makes him breakfast using my groceries. She sits with him watching shows I've never seen him watch before. She starts telling him stories about their past, about all these adventures they had before he met me. Things I've never heard about in 8 years of being together. When I try to talk to Alex about our memories, Chloe interrupts with, "Don't pressure him. The doctor said forcing memories could make things worse." Then one day I come home and there are boxes in my living room. Chloe's moving in. Alex is sitting there looking confused but accepting it. Chloe announces she's taking the guest room so she can provide round-the-clock care. I ask Alex if we discussed this, and he looks at me blankly and says Chloe told him I agreed to it. I pull her aside and tell her this is inappropriate. She goes, "He only responds to me. I'm the only person he fully trusts right now. Do you want him to get better or not?" She actually says, "You should be grateful I'm willing to do this. Most people wouldn't sacrifice their life to help." She's not sacrificing anything. She works from her laptop and now lives rent-free in my house. The exclusion starts small. She answers his phone when I call from work. He's resting. He's having a hard day. Maybe call later. She starts planning his days without telling me. Takes him to doctor appointments I don't know about until after. Signs him up for activities and support groups but forgets to mention when they are. I come home one Friday and they're having dinner with candles. She's wearing a dress and he's in a button-up shirt I've never seen. She goes, "Oh, I thought you were working late tonight." Then she changes the locks while I'm at work. Says it's for Alex's safety because he was getting confused and might wander out. Gives me a key, but oops, it doesn't work properly. Must be defective. I have to ring the doorbell to my own house and wait for her to let me in. She starts calling herself his caregiver to everyone. Tells the neighbors she's basically saving his life while I neglect him for my career. This goes on for 3 months. 3 months of her pushing me out of my own marriage. Then last week I come home and find papers on the kitchen counter. Power of attorney documents with Alex's shaky signature. She's trying to get control of his medical and financial decisions. That's when I lose it. I call Alex's brother Nathan, who lives 2 hours away. Nathan never liked Chloe. Always said she was weirdly possessive of Alex. I tell him everything and he drives down that night. He walks into the house without knocking because I gave him my supposedly defective key that actually works fine when you jiggle it right. Chloe's sitting on the couch with her legs across Alex's lap, feeding him popcorn while they watch a movie. Nathan goes, "What the hell is this?" And Chloe jumps up trying to explain, but Nathan's not having it. He starts asking Alex questions only family would know. About their dad's funeral, their mom's birthday, the cottage they went to as kids. Alex answers them all perfectly. His long-term memory is totally intact. Then Nathan asks about me, about our relationship, and Alex gets this frustrated look. Chloe immediately tries to intervene, but Nathan tells her to shut up. That's when Alex stands up and looks at Chloe. "I remember the party," he says quietly. "Your birthday party where you introduced me to Laura." Chloe goes white. Alex stands there not moving, his eyes going back and forth between Chloe's white face and Nathan standing next to me. The air feels heavy with that memory of the birthday party 8 years ago just hanging there between us. I watch my husband's face change from looking confused to something else. Something that looks like he's starting to understand something horrible. His hands shake a little at his sides, and he takes a step back from Chloe like he needs distance from her. Chloe's mouth opens and closes, but nothing comes out at first. She looks like she might throw up or pass out, her skin gone all pale and sweaty. Nathan crosses his arms and doesn't move, just keeps watching Alex with this protective look on his face. I can feel my own heart beating, so hard in my chest I'm worried everyone can hear it. Alex blinks a few times like he's trying to clear his head and his breathing gets faster. He puts one hand up to his forehead and presses his fingers there like his head hurts. The TV is still on in the background, some show playing that nobody's watching anymore, and the popcorn bowl sits on the couch where Chloe dropped it when Nathan came in. Chloe suddenly finds her voice and starts talking fast. She says Alex is just confused right now and all this stress is making his memory worse, that we need to calm down and let him rest. But Nathan cuts her off before she can say more and asks Alex to describe the party where he met me. His voice is calm but firm, not letting Chloe take control of the conversation like she usually does. Alex's voice comes out shaky and quiet at first. He says it was at Chloe's apartment, the one she had downtown back then. He describes the blue streamers hanging from the ceiling and the cake that had strawberries on it because that's what Chloe liked. He talks about how there were maybe 20 people there and music playing too loud. Then he looks at me and his voice gets a little stronger. He says I was wearing a green dress, and I was standing by the window talking to someone he didn't know. He says Chloe brought him over to meet me, and I smiled at him, and he thought I had the prettiest smile he'd ever seen. These are details Chloe never told him. Couldn't have told him because she wasn't inside his head that night. These are his real memories coming back in pieces, fighting through the fog she's been filling his brain with for months. Chloe tries to interrupt, but Nathan holds up his hand and tells her to be quiet. Alex keeps going, describing how we talked for an hour about movies we both liked, and how he asked for my number before he left. I step forward, my legs feeling wobbly, but I make them move. I ask Alex what else he remembers about us, about our life together. My heart pounds so hard I can barely breathe, and my hands are shaking worse than his are. He turns to look at me, and there are tears in his eyes now, running down his face. His voice breaks when he starts talking. He says he remembers proposing to me at the beach, that little beach 2 hours north where we used to go on weekends. He remembers getting down on one knee in the sand and being so nervous he almost dropped the ring. He remembers our wedding day, how it rained in the morning but cleared up right before the ceremony like the weather knew we needed it to. He remembers dancing with me to that song by his favorite band and how his mom cried during the vows. He remembers buying this house together, walking through it the first time with the real estate agent, and how we both loved it immediately. He remembers us painting the bedroom blue because I loved that color, how we got more paint on ourselves than on the walls and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Each memory he lists makes his voice stronger, makes him stand up straighter, like he's finding himself again piece by piece. I'm crying now too, tears just pouring down my face, but I don't wipe them away. Chloe makes this sound like a wounded animal and starts crying too, but her tears are different, desperate and scared. Chloe starts talking through her sobs, insisting that Alex is just confused by seeing Nathan and me together, that we're overwhelming him with false information and making things worse. She says we're putting ideas in his head that aren't real, that his brain is just making things up because we're pressuring him. But Alex turns to her and his face changes. The confusion is gone and there's something harder there now, something angry. He asks her why she told him I agreed to her moving in, when he's certain now that conversation never happened. His voice is steady despite the tears still on his face. He says he remembers me coming home from work and looking shocked to see her boxes in our living room. He says he remembers feeling confused about why I seemed upset if I'd supposedly agreed to it. Chloe's face crumples and she reaches for him, but he steps back away from her hands. She tries to say she was just trying to help, that she did what was best for him, but the words sound hollow now, even to her. Nathan moves closer to Alex, positioning himself between them like he's ready to physically block Chloe if she tries to touch his brother again. Nathan pulls his phone out of his pocket and starts swiping through it. He turns the screen toward Alex and shows him photos from our wedding that he's had saved for years. There's one of us dancing under the lights with my head on Alex's shoulder. Another of us cutting the cake with our hands on the knife together. One of us kissing under the archway covered in flowers while everyone watches. Alex takes the phone from Nathan's hands and stares at the images. I watch his face as recognition floods across it, as these pictures connect with the memories that are surfacing in his mind. He zooms in on one photo, studying my face and his face and the way we're looking at each other. His finger traces over the screen like he's trying to touch that moment, that version of us that existed before the accident tried to steal it away. He flips through more photos, and with each one his breathing gets faster and his jaw gets tighter. Real memories are connecting with real evidence right in front of him, and Chloe's made-up stories are falling apart. He looks up from the phone and stares at Chloe with this expression of betrayal and disgust. She's still crying, mascara running down her face in black streaks, and she looks smaller somehow, like she's shrinking under his gaze. I take a breath and speak quietly. I tell Alex that I never worked late that Friday when Chloe set up the candle dinner. I tell him I came home at my normal time, 5:30 like always, and found them dressed up together with candles on our dining room table. I remind him that Chloe said she thought I was working late, but I hadn't told anyone I would be because I wasn't. Alex's face goes pale and then red. He looks sick, actually physically ill, like he might need to sit down or throw up. His hands clench into fists at his sides and he closes his eyes for a second. When he opens them, he looks at Chloe and asks her how many other lies she's been feeding him. He asks how many times she told him things that never happened, how many real memories she tried to bury under her fake stories. His voice gets louder as he talks, all the confusion and frustration of the past months coming out. He says she's been manipulating his confusion and memory gaps to rewrite our history, to make herself the center of his life instead of me. Chloe shakes her head frantically and tries to say that's not what she was doing, but nobody believes her anymore. The truth is out there now, and there's no way to stuff it back in and pretend. Chloe makes one last desperate attempt to save whatever she thinks she has left. She grabs Alex's arm with both hands, her fingers digging into his skin, and begs him not to let us poison his mind against her. She says she's the only one who's been there for him every single day, that she's the one who took care of him when nobody else would. Her voice is high and frantic, words tumbling over each other. She says I abandoned him for my job and she's the one who stayed, who made sure he ate and took his medicine and didn't get lost. She's crying so hard she can barely get the words out. Alex looks down at her hands on his arm and very gently, very carefully, removes them. He holds her wrists for just a second and moves them away from him. Then he tells her she needs to leave our house right now. His voice is quiet but absolutely firm, no room for argument. He says this is our home, mine and his, and she doesn't belong here anymore. Chloe's face goes from desperate to shocked to angry in the span of seconds. She opens her mouth to argue, but Alex just shakes his head and takes another step back from her. She refuses to leave and her voice changes, gets sharp and mean. She starts yelling that she has a legal right to be here as his caregiver. She runs to the kitchen counter and grabs those power of attorney papers, waving them in our faces. She says these documents prove she has authority over his medical and financial decisions, that we can't just kick her out. Her hands shake as she holds the papers, and there's this wild look in her eyes like she knows she's losing but won't accept it. Nathan stays completely calm, which somehow makes him seem more intimidating. He pulls his phone back out and starts taking photos of the documents, clear pictures of every page. He tells Chloe those papers were obtained through fraud and manipulation of someone with diminished capacity, which makes them invalid. He says he's a witness to Alex's current mental state, and Alex clearly has the capacity to make his own decisions. He tells her any lawyer will see those papers for what they are, a sick attempt to take control of a vulnerable person's life. Chloe's face goes white again and the papers drop a little in her hands. She looks between the three of us and seems to finally understand that her fantasy is crumbling around her, that she's not going to talk or manipulate or cry her way out of this. I find my voice and it comes out stronger than I expected. I tell Chloe she has 1 hour to pack her belongings from the guest room and leave, or I'm calling the police to remove her for trespassing. I pull my phone out of my pocket and hold it up so she can see I'm serious. Nathan nods and says he'll be happy to explain everything to the officers when they arrive, show them the journal entries and the fraudulent documents and the hidden cameras. Chloe looks between the three of us, her face crumpling as the reality hits her. She's lost. Whatever game she thought she was playing, whatever future she imagined with Alex, it's over. Her shoulders shake with sobs and she turns toward the stairs. She runs up them, her feet pounding on each step, and we hear the guest room door slam so hard the house shakes. The sound of drawers being yanked open and things being thrown around comes through the ceiling. None of us move to go up there. We just stand in the living room listening to the sounds of her destroying whatever was left of her delusion. Alex walks to the couch and sits down heavily, like his legs just gave out. He puts his head in his hands, and his whole body shakes. The flood of returning memories mixing with the realization of how thoroughly Chloe manipulated him seems to hit him all at once. His breathing comes in gasps, and more tears fall between his fingers. I stand there for a second, not sure if I should touch him, not sure if he wants me close or needs space to process. But then I move to the couch and sit beside him carefully, leaving a little distance between us. He must sense me there because he reaches out blindly and finds my hand. He holds it tight, so tight it almost hurts, while tears run down his face and drip onto our joined hands. I squeeze back just as hard, letting him know I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Nathan sits in the chair across from us, his phone still in his hand, watching us both with concern but also relief. The TV is still playing that show nobody's watching, and somewhere upstairs, Chloe is packing up the life she tried to steal, and my husband is holding my hand, like I'm the only real thing in a world that's been lying to him for months. Nathan positions himself near the stairs, arms crossed, watching the ceiling where the thuds and crashes echo down. I stay on the couch next to Alex, our hands still connected and nobody speaks because there's nothing left to say until she's gone. Something heavy hits the floor upstairs and I flinch, but Nathan just shakes his head slightly, silently telling us to stay put. More sounds follow, drawers yanked open so hard they must be coming off their tracks, hangers scraping across the closet rod, things being thrown into bags with angry force. Alex's grip on my hand tightens with each crash and I squeeze back, both of us just breathing and waiting. The guest room door slams open and we hear her footsteps stomping across the hallway, into the bathroom, more cabinet doors banging. Nathan checks his watch and I realize he's timing her, making sure she sticks to the 1-hour deadline I gave. 45 minutes crawl by with the soundtrack of her rage and desperation filtering through the ceiling until finally the noises stop and we hear her coming down the stairs. She appears in the doorway with 2 big suitcases and her laptop bag, her face completely red and swollen from crying, mascara smeared down her cheeks. She stops at the bottom step and looks directly at Alex, ignoring Nathan and me completely. Her voice comes out choked and desperate when she tells him he's making a huge mistake, that I'm just using him. And she's the one who truly loves him, that he'll regret this when his memory comes back fully, and he realizes what he's throwing away. Alex doesn't move, doesn't look at her, just keeps staring at our joined hands on his lap. Nathan steps forward and opens the front door, holding it wide, and after a few seconds of painful silence, Chloe picks up her bags and walks out without another word. Nathan closes the door behind her, locks it, and leans against it like he's physically blocking her from ever coming back in. The 3 of us just stand there in the quiet house for a minute, the absence of her presence almost as loud as the chaos was. Nathan breaks the silence by suggesting we call Alex's neurologist first thing Monday morning to get a real evaluation of his memory and document everything that's been happening. Alex nods and his voice is rough when he admits he's been so confused about which memories are actually his versus what Chloe kept telling him, and he knows he needs professional help to sort through it all. I tell them I'll make the call as soon as the office opens, and Nathan says he'll help us get an emergency appointment, that this situation is serious enough to warrant immediate attention. The next day, I use emergency leave for the first time in 6 months, calling my supervisor and explaining I have a family crisis that needs my full attention. It feels strange to be home on a weekday, to choose being here over the overtime pay we've been depending on, but Alex needs me more than we need the extra money right now. We spend most of the morning just sitting together on the couch not talking much, the TV playing some show neither of us watches while he processes everything, and I fight to keep the tears back. Relief and exhaustion hit me in waves, the weight of the last 3 months finally crashing down now that the immediate threat is gone. Nathan comes downstairs after going through the house room by room, and his face is dark with anger when he holds up a phone charger that looks normal, except it has a tiny camera lens built into the plug. He found 4 of them total, he says, hidden in common areas and disguised as everyday objects, phone chargers and picture frames with cameras inside watching and recording us. The discovery makes my stomach turn violently, and I have to run to the bathroom, physically sick at the thought of her watching us in our own home, documenting our private moments for whatever twisted purpose she had. Alex looks completely crushed when I come back, staring at the devices Nathan lined up on the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Someone he trusted for over 15 years violated our privacy so completely and deliberately, and I watch him struggle to match that betrayal with the friend he thought he knew. We bag up all the cameras to give to our lawyer later, and Nathan checks every room again to make sure there aren't more we missed. That afternoon, we call a locksmith, and I make sure to be present when he arrives, standing right there while he changes every lock on every door. The guy mentions casually that the previous change was done just 6 weeks ago, according to his company's records, and he comments that it's pretty unusual to change locks twice so close together like this. I tell him the first change was done without my permission, and his eyebrows go up, but he doesn't ask more questions, just finishes the job and hands me all the new keys directly. 6 weeks ago lines up perfectly with when Chloe really started cutting me out, when my key stopped working right and I had to wait for her to let me into my own house. Alex's mom calls Nathan's phone while the locksmith is still working, and Nathan steps outside to fill her in on everything. 20 minutes later, he comes back in and tells us she's already in her car driving the 3 hours to get here. When she arrives that evening, she doesn't even say hello, just pulls me into a tight hug in the doorway, and starts apologizing for not realizing something was wrong. She thought I was just busy with work when I stopped joining the family video calls, she says. But now Nathan told her Chloe was apparently answering Alex's phone and making excuses for why I wasn't available. That evening, she takes over our kitchen and starts cooking dinner while telling Alex stories about our relationship, real memories that help connect the fragments he's been struggling with. She describes our engagement party at their house, the holidays we spent together as a family, the long conversations we had about buying this house and starting our life here. I watch Alex's face while she talks and see genuine memories starting to surface and link up with her words, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something like relief. She tells him about the time I helped her plant her garden, and we talked for hours about our future plans, about the Christmas when Alex and I announced we were trying to buy a house, and everyone celebrated with champagne. Each story she shares seems to unlock something in his mind, pieces of our real history pushing out the false narrative Chloe built. Monday morning comes and I go with Alex to see his neurologist, the appointment Nathan somehow managed to get scheduled as an emergency. Dr. Riddle is a small woman with sharp eyes who listens carefully while we explain what's been happening over the past few months. Her face gets more concerned as the story unfolds, and she immediately orders a new cognitive assessment to evaluate where Alex's memory function actually is right now and how much progress he's made. She takes detailed notes about Chloe's constant presence and the systematic misinformation, and I can tell she's disturbed by what she's hearing. After the initial exam, she pulls up Alex's file on her computer and scrolls through the treatment plan from his original neurologist. She's clearly surprised when she reads that the care recommendations specifically emphasized familiar family members as primary support during recovery, not friends or extended social connections. She turns to us and explains that having someone deliberately feed false information to a patient during such a vulnerable time could have actually slowed down or blocked his natural memory recovery process, that the brain needs accurate environmental context to rebuild proper neural pathways. Dr. Riddle pulls up the test results on her computer screen and turns the monitor so we can both see the charts and numbers displayed there. She points to different sections while explaining that Alex's long-term memory function is completely normal, showing no signs of damage or impairment from the accident. His recall of events from childhood through about 6 years ago is actually excellent for someone who experienced head trauma. Then she shows us the recent memory scores and explains that while there were some gaps immediately after the accident, his brain has been rebuilding those connections much faster than the original prognosis suggested. She looks directly at me when she says the confusion and disorientation Alex experienced over the past few months was likely made worse by someone feeding him wrong information during a time when his brain was trying to sort out what was real. Hearing a medical professional confirm that Chloe's lies actually hurt Alex's recovery makes my hands shake with anger. Dr. Riddle prints out copies of the test results and adds her notes about how Alex's cognitive function is strong enough that he can absolutely make his own medical and legal decisions. She writes that any document signed during the period when he was receiving contradictory information about his own life should be reviewed carefully because his confusion was situational, not a permanent impairment. Alex sits quietly during most of this explanation, staring at the test results like they might change if he looks away. Then his face crumples and he starts crying right there in the doctor's office, these big shaking sobs that make his whole body move. Dr. Riddle hands him a box of tissues and waits patiently while he tries to pull himself together enough to talk. He tells her that he started having doubts about some of Chloe's stories a few weeks ago, because certain things she said didn't match up with feelings he had, or brief flashes of memory that contradicted her version. But every time he questioned something or said it didn't feel right, Chloe told him that his brain was getting worse, and that confusion meant the amnesia was spreading. She convinced him that trusting his own instincts was actually a symptom of his condition getting worse, so he stopped questioning her even when things felt wrong. Dr. Riddle leans forward and explains in this calm, clear voice that what Chloe did was a classic manipulation tactic used by people who want to control someone vulnerable. She says that Alex's instinct to question inconsistencies was actually a sign of healthy brain function, proof that his mind was working properly to identify false information. The fact that he felt something was wrong means his memory and reasoning were working exactly as they should. Alex cries harder when she says this, and I realize he's been carrying guilt about not fighting back against Chloe's narrative, thinking his confusion meant he was broken somehow. We leave the appointment an hour later with a folder full of documents including the test results, Dr. Riddle's detailed notes about Alex's memory status, and her professional opinion that he has full capacity to make his own decisions about his medical care and legal matters. Nathan calls while we're walking to the car and I put him on speaker, so Alex can hear too. I tell Nathan what Dr. Riddle said, and he makes this satisfied sound like he knew all along that Alex was manipulated rather than actually impaired. He says these documents will be crucial for getting those power of attorney papers thrown out, because they prove Alex wasn't in a state to give informed consent when Chloe had him sign them. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I feel like we have real ammunition to fight back against what Chloe did. We're not just claiming she manipulated him, we have medical evidence that his confusion was caused by her lies, not by permanent brain damage. That afternoon, we drive to the office of Kellen Strong, the attorney Nathan recommended who specializes in cases involving people who were taken advantage of while vulnerable. His office is in a small building downtown, and the waiting room has comfortable chairs and magazines that aren't too old. Kellen turns out to be this middle-aged guy with gray hair and reading glasses who looks at the power of attorney documents with a serious expression, while Alex and I sit across from his desk. He reads through every page carefully, sometimes going back to reread certain sections and makes notes on a legal pad. After about 20 minutes, he sets the papers down and tells us they're legally problematic for several reasons. First, Alex signed them while he was confused about basic facts of his own life, which raises questions about whether he understood what he was signing. Second, Chloe had a clear conflict of interest because she was the person who would benefit from having power of attorney, while also being the one who convinced Alex to sign. Third, the documents were prepared without any independent legal counsel for Alex, which is a red flag in cases involving someone with known cognitive issues. Kellen says we can file a motion to have the documents declared void, and he'll also send Chloe a cease and desist letter warning her not to try using those papers for anything. He explains that the letter will make it clear that if she attempts to use the power of attorney, she could face legal consequences, including charges of fraud or exploitation of a vulnerable person. When we get home that evening, Alex goes looking for his phone because he realizes he hasn't actually looked at it in weeks. Chloe always had it nearby, said she was keeping it charged and managing his messages so he wouldn't get overwhelmed. He finds it in the kitchen drawer where she apparently left it, but when he tries to unlock it, the passcode doesn't work. He tries his birthday, our anniversary, his mom's birthday, nothing works. Finally, he has to do a factory reset using his computer, and when he logs back into his accounts, we discover that Chloe changed his passcode to something only she knew. Once he gets access to his messages, we see that most of his text history with me from the past 5 years is gone. Hundreds of conversations deleted, including messages from when we were dating, when we got engaged, when we bought this house. She also deleted photos from his phone, pictures of us together at family events, on vacations, just random daily photos that documented our life. Looking at the empty photo library with huge gaps where our relationship used to be feels like seeing another layer of her plan to erase me from his life. She didn't just try to replace me in the present, she literally tried to delete evidence that I was ever important to him. I help Alex log into his cloud backup account, and we discover that the photos aren't completely gone, just deleted from his phone. We spend the evening sitting on the couch going through pictures, downloading them back onto his phone one by one. Each photo seems to trigger something in his memory, and he keeps pausing to stare at images like he's seeing them for the first time, even though he was there when they were taken. There's a photo from our honeymoon at the beach, and he stops scrolling to study it for a full minute before saying he remembers that day, remembers how happy he felt, remembers thinking he was the luckiest person alive. He keeps apologizing for not fighting harder against Chloe's version of events, for letting her convince him that our marriage wasn't real or wasn't important. I tell him over and over that he was vulnerable and she took advantage of that none of this is his fault. She deliberately targeted someone who couldn't defend themselves properly, someone whose brain was injured and confused. What she did was calculated and cruel, and he was the victim, not the problem. The next morning, Josephine from my work calls to check on me because I used emergency leave for the first time in the 3 years I've worked there. I answer the phone planning to give her some basic update, but as soon as I hear her friendly voice asking how I'm doing, I completely break down. I end up telling her everything that's been happening, the whole story about Chloe moving in and taking over and trying to steal my husband while he couldn't remember our life together. Josephine is quiet for a long moment after I finish. Then she says she's horrified and had no idea things were that bad at home. She tells me she noticed over the past few months that I seemed increasingly stressed and exhausted, that I stopped talking about Alex or my home life, that I looked like I was barely holding it together during shifts. But she figured I was just dealing with the normal stress of having a spouse with medical issues. She never imagined someone was actively sabotaging my marriage and pushing me out of my own house. She asks if there's anything she can do to help, and offers to talk to our supervisor about getting me more flexible scheduling for the next few weeks while we sort everything out. That afternoon, Alex's Aunt Marlene calls his phone, which is lucky because if she'd called last week, Chloe probably would have answered and made up some excuse about why Alex couldn't talk. Marlene says she heard from Nathan about everything that happened, and she needs to tell us something important about Chloe. She remembers Chloe from high school because Chloe used to hang around Alex constantly back then, and it made everyone in the family uncomfortable. Marlene describes how Chloe had this intense, obsessive crush on Alex that went way beyond normal teenage feelings. She would follow him around school, show up uninvited to family events and holidays, call the house multiple times a day asking to talk to him. Marlene says Chloe got visibly angry whenever Alex dated other girls, and she remembers one incident where Chloe showed up crying at their house after Alex took someone else to prom. The family thought Chloe would grow out of it after high school ended, and when she introduced Alex to me years later, they figured she'd finally moved on and accepted being just friends. Apparently, they were wrong. This information completely reframes everything, because it means Chloe's feelings for Alex aren't something new that developed recently. She's been obsessed with him for over 15 years, just waiting for an opportunity to act on it. Alex sits down heavily at the kitchen table when Marlene tells us this, his face pale and shocked. He says he always thought Chloe just valued their friendship, that she was protective of him the way good friends are protective. He never realized her feelings went deeper and darker than that, never understood that she'd been waiting all this time for a chance to be with him. The accident gave her exactly what she'd been wanting for years, a version of Alex who didn't remember choosing someone else over her, who didn't remember building a life with me instead of with her. She saw his amnesia as her opportunity to finally get what she wanted, to rewrite history so that she was the important person in his life instead of me. Later that evening, I go into the guest room to start packing up the last of Chloe's things that she left behind in her rush to leave. I'm pulling clothes out of the closet when I find a journal wedged between some boxes on the top shelf. I know I shouldn't read it, that it's an invasion of privacy, even though she invaded every aspect of our lives, but I can't stop myself. I take it downstairs, and Alex and I sit at the kitchen table reading it together, and what we find makes me feel physically sick. The entries start right after Alex's accident, and the first one talks about how she couldn't believe her luck that he finally couldn't remember me, that this was her chance to make him see they were meant to be together. She writes about her joy that the accident gave her an opening to finally be with him after wanting him for so long. There are detailed entries about her plans to make me look like a neglectful wife who cared more about work than about Alex. She describes her strategy for feeding him stories about their past that made their friendship seem more important than it was, for creating false memories that would replace his real ones of our relationship. She writes about her fantasy of Alex falling in love with her once he forgot about me, about how they would finally be together the way she always believed they should be. The rest of the pages are even worse because she tracked everything like some kind of twisted science project. There are columns showing what time Alex took his medication each day, what he ate for breakfast, which TV shows they watched together, even notes about his mood and confusion levels. She documented every single story she told him about their past with dates and times, like she was building a careful narrative brick by brick. One page has a timeline showing her plan for the first month, the second month, the third month, each phase designed to push me further out while pulling herself deeper into his life. She wrote about replacing my photos with older ones that didn't include me, about gradually changing his routine to match hers instead of ours, about feeding him just enough truth mixed with lies that he wouldn't question the whole story. Reading her calculated manipulation laid out so clearly makes me feel sick to my stomach, but I force myself to keep turning pages because this is evidence of her deliberate actions rather than misguided help. Nathan comes back into the kitchen and sees us sitting there with the journal spread across the table, our faces probably showing exactly how disturbed we are by what we're reading. He picks up a few pages and starts reading, his expression getting darker with each entry he scans. Then he pulls out his phone and starts taking photos of every single page, holding each one flat against the table and making sure the writing is clear and readable in each shot. He photographs the timeline page, the daily tracking sheets, the strategy notes, the fantasy entries about her and Alex being together, all of it documented in careful detail. When he finishes, he tells us he's sending everything to Kellen right now, because this journal is exactly the kind of evidence we need. I text Kellen's number that Nathan gives me, asking if we can meet tomorrow morning, and he responds within 10 minutes saying he can see us at 9. That night, Alex barely sleeps, tossing and turning beside me, and around 3 in the morning, I wake up to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, breathing hard with his hands shaking. He's having a panic attack, the first one I've seen him have, and he tells me between gasps that he's terrified Chloe might come back, that she might find a way in again, that his memories will fade and he'll forget me all over again. I talk him through, breathing slowly, in and out, counting with him until his heart rate settles and the shaking stops. In the morning, I call Dr. Riddle's office as soon as they open and explain what's happening with the panic attacks and the anxiety. Her nurse gets me an appointment for that afternoon, and when we sit down with Dr. Riddle, she listens to everything, and then writes down a name and number on her prescription pad. She tells us about Evan Cross, a therapist who works specifically with trauma and relationship recovery, someone who can help us process what happened and rebuild our marriage after such a violation. We call Evan's office from the parking lot, and his receptionist says he had a cancellation for Friday morning, so we grab that appointment time. Then we drive straight to Kellen's office for our 9 o'clock meeting, walking into a small building downtown where he practices family law. Kellen is maybe 50 with gray hair and a calm way of speaking that makes me feel like he's actually listening instead of just waiting to talk. Nathan already sent him the journal photos, and Kellen has them pulled up on his computer screen when we walk in. He clicks through page after page while we sit across from his desk, and when he's done, he sits back and tells us this demonstrates clear intent to manipulate someone with diminished capacity. He explains that while it might not lead to criminal charges, it strengthens our case for restraining orders significantly and ensures Chloe can't claim she was just trying to help her friend. The journal shows planning, strategy, deliberate deception, all of it documented in her own handwriting. Kellen says he'll start drafting a petition for a restraining order, and that we should document any contact Chloe attempts from this point forward. We leave his office feeling like we finally have someone on our side who understands how serious this is. That afternoon, I sit down with my supervisor at work and explain that I need to reduce my hours to part-time for the next month. I don't tell her all the details, just that my husband is recovering from a medical situation and needs more support at home than I've been able to provide. She's understanding and tells me to do what I need to do for my family, that my job will be here when I'm ready to come back full-time. The financial hit is going to hurt because we're still catching up from all the medical bills, but Alex needs consistent support, and I need to be present to help him feel secure. Josephine finds me in the break room before I leave and gives me a hug, telling me she'll help cover my shifts and that I should focus on taking care of things at home. That same evening, my phone starts buzzing with texts from Chloe. The first one says she's sorry for everything and just wants to talk. The second one, 10 minutes later, says I turned Alex against her and poisoned his mind. The third one accuses me of being a terrible wife who abandoned him when he needed help most. They keep coming, bouncing between apologizing and blaming, between begging and attacking. Alex's phone is doing the same thing, lighting up with call after call that he doesn't answer. I screenshot every message and forward them to Kellen like he told us to do, documenting everything but not responding to any of it. Kellen texts back saying he'll send her a formal cease and desist letter tomorrow, demanding she stop all contact. Friday morning arrives and we drive to Evan's office for our first therapy session, both of us nervous about talking to a stranger about everything that happened. Evan's office is in a converted house with comfortable chairs and soft lighting, nothing like the clinical feel of Dr. Riddle's medical office. He's younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with an easy smile that puts us somewhat at ease. The session is harder than I thought it would be because saying everything out loud to someone new makes it feel real all over again. We both talk about feeling violated by Chloe's manipulation, about the trauma of nearly losing our marriage to someone who was supposed to be a friend. Evan listens without interrupting, taking notes occasionally, and when we finish, he tells us that we're both victims of her calculated exploitation. He explains that what Chloe did wasn't accidental or misguided. It was deliberate and predatory, taking advantage of Alex's vulnerability and my absence. He says rebuilding trust will take time and patience from both of us, that we can't expect to just bounce back from something this serious. Alex admits that he feels guilty for not recognizing the manipulation sooner, for letting Chloe push me out of my own home while he sat there confused and accepting. His voice breaks when he says he should have known something was wrong, should have questioned her more, should have protected our marriage better. I tell him I feel guilty too, for not being there more during his recovery, for prioritizing work and bills over being present even though I was trying to keep us financially stable. Evan stops us both and points out that Chloe deliberately exploited the exact circumstances that made us vulnerable. He explains that manipulators are skilled at finding and widening existing cracks in relationships, at taking advantage of situations where people are stretched thin and struggling. Alex's memory issues and my work demands created a perfect opportunity for someone like Chloe to insert herself and rewrite our reality. Recognizing her tactics doesn't mean we failed, Evan tells us. It means we survived something that was designed to destroy us. We leave that first session feeling emotionally wrung out, but also slightly hopeful, like maybe we can actually recover from this. That evening, we start something new that Evan suggested, daily check-ins where Alex tells me what he remembers clearly and what still feels fuzzy or uncertain. I fill in gaps with stories and photos, but without any pressure for him to remember, just offering information and letting his brain process it naturally. Dr. Riddle said this gentle, honest approach will help his memory recovery much more than Chloe's method of feeding him false narratives mixed with manipulation. We sit on the couch with photo albums, and Alex points to pictures asking me to tell him about that day, that trip, that moment. Some things he remembers as soon as he sees the photo, the memory clicking back into place. Other things stay fuzzy no matter how much detail I provide, and I tell him that's okay, that we can make new memories together. 2 weeks after everything exploded, Nathan has to pack up and head home to his own job and family. He's been staying in our guest room, the same room Chloe occupied for 3 months, and having him here has made both of us feel safer and more grounded. Before he leaves, he makes Alex promise to call him immediately if anything feels wrong or if Chloe tries to make contact again. Nathan hugs me tight and tells me he's sorry he didn't realize what was happening sooner, that he should have checked in more during Alex's recovery. I tell him he saved our marriage by showing up when he did, that we wouldn't have gotten through this without him. After Nathan drives away, the house feels too quiet, and Alex gets anxious again, so we take a walk around the neighborhood just to stay busy. That evening, Nathan calls right at 7 to check on us, asking detailed questions about how Alex is feeling and whether Chloe has tried anything. It becomes a routine, Nathan calling every evening at 7 to make sure we're okay, and that Chloe hasn't tried to come back, His support and validation that Chloe's behavior was unacceptable has been crucial for both of us, making us feel less crazy about what happened, and more confident that we're doing the right things to protect ourselves and rebuild our marriage. 3 evenings later, I'm in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when someone starts pounding on the front door. My stomach drops because I recognize the frantic rhythm of those knocks. Alex freezes with a dish towel in his hands, and we both stare toward the entrance. Chloe's voice comes through the door, high and desperate, begging us to let her in so she can explain everything. She keeps saying she just wants to talk, that we're misunderstanding the situation, that she never meant to hurt anyone. Alex pulls out his phone and dials the police while I back away from the windows, my heart racing. I peek through the curtain and see her on our porch, makeup running down her face, still banging and crying. The operator asks Alex to describe what's happening, and he explains about the cease and desist letter, about Chloe showing up anyway. 10 minutes feel like forever while we wait inside, listening to her pound and plead. When the patrol car pulls up, red and blue lights washing across our lawn, Chloe finally stops knocking. 2 officers approach her, and I watch through the window as she tries to explain herself, gesturing wildly toward our door. One officer comes to talk to us while the other stays with Chloe. We show him the cease and desist letter that Kellen sent, and the officer takes photos of it with his phone. He goes back outside and talks to Chloe for another 5 minutes before she finally gets in her car and drives away. The officer returns with an incident report number and tells us this violation gives us solid grounds for a restraining order. The next morning, I call Kellen before I even have coffee and tell him what happened. He says to come to his office right away and bring the incident report. Alex and I drive over together and spend 2 hours filling out paperwork for a temporary restraining order. Kellen explains the process, how there will be a hearing in about 2 weeks where a judge will decide whether to make it permanent. In the meantime, the temporary order requires Chloe to stay at least 500 feet from our house, our workplaces, and anywhere she knows we'll be. Kellen files everything electronically and says we should have the temporary order by end of day. When we leave his office, Alex reaches for my hand in the parking lot and holds it tight. That afternoon, Kellen emails to confirm the temporary order is active, and Chloe has been served. For the first time in months, I feel like we have actual legal protection between us and her delusions. Over the next 2 weeks, Alex's memory keeps getting better. One morning, he wakes up and remembers our anniversary trip to the mountains 3 years ago, describing the cabin we stayed in and the hike we took to the waterfall. He remembers details I'd forgotten, like how it rained the second day, and we spent hours playing cards by the fireplace. A few days later, he brings up our plans to renovate the kitchen next year, talking about the tile we picked out and how we wanted to knock down the wall to the dining room. These memories feel different from the confused fragments he had before, more solid and connected to actual emotions. He even remembers a conversation we had about maybe starting a family someday, about how we wanted to wait until we were more financially stable. Each recovered memory feels like reclaiming another piece of our life that Chloe tried to erase. Dr. Riddle says this level of improvement is excellent and shows his brain is healing properly now that he's not being fed false information constantly. But then I start reaching out to some of our mutual friends to let them know what really happened, and I discover the damage Chloe did to our social circle. My friend Jessica tells me Chloe called her months ago saying I was neglecting Alex, working all the time while he suffered alone. Another friend, Aaron, admits Chloe told him I was too focused on my career to care about my husband's recovery. She poisoned people against me systematically, painting herself as the devoted friend stepping in where the neglectful wife failed. I send individual messages to close friends explaining the truth, about the manipulation and the fraud and the hidden cameras. Most of them are horrified when they learn what actually happened. Jessica apologizes for believing Chloe and says she should have reached out to me directly. Aaron feels terrible for judging me without knowing the full story. But a few friends stay quiet or send awkward, distant responses that make it clear they're not sure who to believe. Those friendships might be permanently damaged. Another casualty of Chloe's campaign to steal my life. The restraining order hearing arrives on a Tuesday morning. Alex and I get to the courthouse early and meet Kellen in the hallway outside the courtroom. He's carrying a folder thick with evidence, all the documentation we've gathered over the past weeks. When we walk into the courtroom, Chloe is already there with her own lawyer, a sharp woman in a gray suit. Chloe looks smaller somehow, her hair pulled back severely, wearing a conservative dress I've never seen before. Her lawyer stands up when the judge enters and immediately starts talking about how Chloe was just a concerned friend trying to help someone in medical crisis. She makes it sound noble, like Chloe sacrificed her time and energy out of pure friendship, but then Kellen presents our evidence, laying it out piece by piece. He shows the journal entries where Chloe detailed her plans to replace me. He presents the fraudulent power of attorney documents. He displays screenshots of the deleted messages and photos from Alex's phone. He shows pictures of the hidden cameras we found throughout our house. The judge's expression gets harder with each piece of evidence. When Kellen finishes, the judge looks at Chloe and asks if she installed surveillance equipment in someone else's home without their knowledge. Chloe's lawyer tries to argue it was for Alex's safety, but the judge cuts her off. After less than 10 minutes of deliberation, the judge grants us a 1-year restraining order without any hesitation in her voice. Chloe's lawyer makes one last attempt, arguing that Chloe should at least be allowed to contact Alex directly to apologize and get closure. But the judge leans forward and speaks directly to Chloe. She says the pattern of manipulation and boundary violations demonstrated in the evidence shows Chloe is not trustworthy around someone who is medically vulnerable. The judge states clearly that exploiting someone's amnesia and confusion to insert yourself into their life is a serious violation of trust. She says the hidden cameras alone would justify the restraining order, but combined with everything else, Chloe's behavior shows a disturbing level of obsession and control. Sitting there listening to the judge validate what happened to us, hearing an authority figure state plainly that we were victims of manipulation, feels like finally being believed after months of gaslighting. Alex squeezes my hand so hard it hurts, but I don't pull away. When we leave the courthouse, Chloe is still sitting in the courtroom with her lawyer and we don't look back. That evening, Alex suggests we go out to dinner, just the two of us, something we haven't done since before his accident. We drive to a little Italian place we used to love, the one with the red checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Sitting across from him without Chloe's shadow hanging over us feels strange and wonderful. We talk about real things, actual memories we share, not manufactured stories someone else fed him. Alex tells me about a project at work he's excited about. I tell him about Josephine and the other people at my job who supported me through everything. We discuss our hopes for the future, about taking a real vacation once things settle down, about maybe getting that dog we always talked about. The conversation flows naturally without anyone interrupting or redirecting. For the first time in 6 months, I feel like I'm actually talking to my husband instead of someone Chloe was trying to reprogram. When we get home that night, we sit on the couch together watching a show we both actually enjoy, and it feels like the first truly honest moment we've had since his accident. Our next therapy session with Evan focuses on rebuilding intimacy and trust through small, consistent actions instead of trying to fix everything at once. He tells us that grand romantic gestures won't heal what we've been through, but daily choices to show up for each other will. We start with simple things, cooking dinner together instead of separately, taking evening walks around the neighborhood, watching shows that we both actually want to see. Evan has us practice checking in with each other about how we're feeling without trying to fix or minimize those feelings. Alex admits he still sometimes doubts his own memories, worrying that he can't trust his own brain. I admit I sometimes feel angry at him for letting Chloe in, even though I know he was vulnerable and confused. Evan helps us understand that these feelings are normal after what we experienced, and that healing means accepting the complicated emotions instead of pushing them away. We leave each session with specific homework, little exercises designed to help us relearn each other's rhythms and preferences after months of being kept apart. Dr. Riddle clears Alex to return to work part-time, starting with 3 days a week. Having normal routine and purpose helps his confidence more than any therapy session could. He comes home after his first day back energized and talking about conversations with coworkers, about projects he's been assigned, about feeling useful again. His coworkers are supportive and understanding about his recovery, asking questions but not pushing. Being back in a familiar environment triggers more positive memories of his capabilities and his life before the accident. He remembers presentations he gave, problems he solved, relationships with colleagues that have nothing to do with the nightmare at home. Work gives him an identity separate from being a patient or a victim, reminds him that he's a competent person who had a full life that Chloe tried to erase. Watching him regain confidence in himself makes me remember why I fell in love with him, reminds me of the man I married before amnesia and manipulation tried to destroy us. Nora, Alex's mom, visits again the following weekend and brings 3 photo albums from Alex's childhood and our early relationship. She deliberately chose albums that Chloe never had access to, pictures from before Chloe was part of Alex's life and from our first years together. We spread the albums across the dining room table and spend Saturday afternoon going through them. Nora tells stories about Alex as a kid, about family vacations and holidays, about his personality before high school when Chloe entered his life. Then we move to pictures of Alex and me when we first started dating, photos from parties and trips and ordinary moments that Chloe couldn't rewrite because she wasn't there. Alex stares at a picture of us at a concert, both of us sweaty and laughing, his arm around my shoulders. He remembers that night, remembers the band we saw and the terrible nachos we ate, and how we got lost trying to find the car afterward. Each photo sparks another memory, and by Sunday evening his recall of our history feels stronger and more detailed than it has since the accident. Nora hugs us both before she leaves and tells Alex she's proud of how hard he's fighting to get his life back. 3 months after Nathan's intervention, I sit in Dr. Riddle's office with Alex for another follow-up appointment. She runs through the same cognitive tests she's been doing since the beginning, asking questions about dates and events and people. Alex answers most of them correctly now, his voice confident instead of hesitant and confused like it was months ago. Dr. Riddle reviews her notes and tells us that his memory of our 5 years together is about 80% recovered, which she says is excellent progress. Some gaps might never fully return, she explains, but they're small things that don't affect his daily life or our relationship. Alex reaches over and takes my hand while she talks, something he does naturally now without thinking about whether we're married or not. The remaining fuzzy spots are random details like what color we painted the guest room or which restaurant we went to for our 3rd anniversary, not the big important memories that define us. Dr. Riddle says his brain has done remarkable work healing itself, especially considering how much Chloe's manipulation could have damaged his natural recovery process. We leave her office with another appointment scheduled for 6 months out instead of 6 weeks, which feels like a huge milestone in itself. The next week, Josephine calls me during her lunch break with news she heard through mutual friends. Chloe lost several of her freelance clients after word spread about what she did, about the manipulation and boundary violations and fraud attempt. Apparently, people in the design community talk, and nobody wants to work with someone who's capable of that level of deception and obsession. Josephine says Chloe moved to a different city entirely, starting over somewhere nobody knows her history. Part of me feels guilty hearing this, wondering if we ruined her life by exposing what she did. I bring it up in our next session with Evan, and he helps me work through those complicated feelings. He reminds me that we didn't spread rumors or try to destroy her professionally, we just protected ourselves and told the truth about what happened. The consequences Chloe faces are natural results of her own choices and actions, not something we inflicted on her out of revenge. If she loses clients because people don't trust her anymore, that's because she proved herself untrustworthy, not because we're vindictive. Evan says feeling some guilt is normal and even healthy because it means I'm not a cruel person, but I can't let that guilt make me responsible for her consequences. Alex and I talk about it on the drive home, and he admits he feels the same complicated mix of relief that she's gone and guilt about the impact on her life. That conversation leads to another one a few days later about how we want to move forward, about creating something positive out of all this trauma. Alex suggests we renew our vows, not because the original ones aren't valid, but because we want to choose each other again with full awareness and commitment. We start planning a small ceremony with just close family and friends, keeping it simple and intimate in our backyard. The planning process itself becomes healing as we pick readings and music and write our own vows. We're not just planning a party, we're consciously deciding what our marriage means to us now after everything that tried to destroy it. We spend evenings at the kitchen table working on vow drafts, talking about what we want to promise each other going forward. Alex writes about choosing me every day, even when his brain couldn't remember why. About his heart knowing where home was, even when his memory failed. I write about fighting for us no matter what obstacles appear, about never letting anyone push me out of my own marriage again. The ceremony happens on a sunny Saturday afternoon in early June. We set up chairs in the backyard under the big oak tree, maybe 30 people total, including Nathan, who flies in to be best man, and Josephine, who stands beside me as maid of honor. Nora cries through the whole thing, happy tears this time instead of the worried ones she shed months ago. Alex wears a navy suit and I wear a simple white dress. Nothing fancy because this isn't about show, it's about substance. When it's time for vows, Alex's voice shakes a little as he talks about the journey we've been on, about losing himself and finding his way back to me. He says that even when his memory failed him, his heart knew where home was, knew that I was the person he was supposed to wake up next to every morning. I cry happy tears through my own vows about fighting for us no matter what, about learning that love isn't just about the good times, but about refusing to give up during the impossible ones. Nathan hands us the rings and we slide them back on each other's fingers, renewing promises we made 8 years ago, but with deeper understanding now of what those promises really mean. Everyone claps and we kiss, and it feels like starting fresh while honoring everything we've been through together. The following weekend, we finally start the kitchen renovation we'd planned before Alex's accident. We spend Saturday mornings at the hardware store picking out cabinet hardware and paint colors, making decisions together about what we want our space to look like. Alex handles the demolition work, ripping out the old cabinets with an energy that feels cathartic after months of feeling helpless and confused. I work on painting the walls a soft gray color we both love, music playing while we work side by side. The physical act of building something new in our home feels symbolic of rebuilding our marriage, creating something better and stronger than before. We mess up sometimes, cutting a board wrong or putting hardware on backwards, but we laugh about it and fix it together. Working on the renovation gives us a shared project and purpose, something we're creating together that has nothing to do with Chloe or amnesia or manipulation. By the end of summer, the kitchen is finished and it's beautiful, a space that's completely ours without any tainted memories attached to it. Dr. Riddle clears Alex to return to work full-time in September, and I go back to my normal schedule as well. But we're both more intentional about work-life balance now, having learned the hard way that financial stability means nothing if we're not present in our own lives and relationship. Alex leaves the office at 5 instead of staying late, and I don't pick up extra shifts unless absolutely necessary. We have dinner together most nights, talking about our days and making plans for the weekend. The mortgage still gets paid and the bills are covered, but we're not sacrificing our marriage to make that happen anymore. We learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, and we're not forgetting it. 6 months after Chloe left, a letter arrives forwarded through Kellen's office. She's asking if she can apologize in person, saying she's been in therapy and understands now how wrong her actions were. Reading her words makes my stomach tight with anxiety, even though she's hundreds of miles away. Alex and I discuss it with Evan in our next session, talking through whether meeting with her would help or hurt our healing process. Evan asks good questions about what we hope to gain from seeing her versus what we risk by reopening contact. After thinking it through, we decide together that we've moved forward, and reopening contact would be harmful to our healing process. Kellen sends a response through his office explaining our decision, keeping it brief and professional. We don't owe Chloe closure or forgiveness, Evan reminds us, especially not if providing it would damage our own recovery. A few weeks later, Marlene calls with news that Chloe started therapy after everything fell apart. She heard it through the community network that still connects people from their hometown. I hope that means Chloe is getting help for whatever drove her obsessive behavior, whatever made her think manipulating a vulnerable person was acceptable. While I can't forgive what she did to us, I don't wish her harm either. I just want distance and space for all of us to heal separately, for her to work on her issues far away from our marriage and our lives. Alex says he feels the same way, that he hopes she gets better but never wants to see her again. That seems like the healthiest boundary we can set, wishing her well from a permanent distance. In October, we adopt a dog from the local shelter, a goofy golden retriever mix who brings joy and laughter back into our home. We name him Cooper, and he's all energy and slobbery kisses, forcing us to take walks every morning and evening. Taking care of something together, building new routines around his feeding and training and exercise, gives us shared purpose beyond just recovering from trauma. Cooper doesn't know anything about amnesia or manipulation or restraining orders. He just knows that we're his people, and he loves us completely. Walking him around the neighborhood, we meet other dog owners and have normal conversations about nothing important. Those ordinary interactions feel precious after months of everything being heavy and complicated. Cooper sleeps between us on the bed and makes us laugh when he steals socks or barks at his own reflection. He's creating fresh memories with us that aren't tainted by the trauma of the past year. In therapy, Evan tells us we've made remarkable progress in rebuilding trust and intimacy after such a profound betrayal and medical crisis. We still have occasional difficult days when Alex's remaining memory gaps cause frustration, or when I feel triggered by reminders of how close we came to losing everything. But we've learned to communicate through those moments instead of shutting down or pulling away. Alex knows now to tell me when he's feeling confused or anxious about a memory, and I know how to support him without trying to force anything. I've learned to express when something triggers my fear or anger about what happened, and Alex listens without getting defensive. Evan says that kind of honest communication is what makes marriages survive the impossible situations, and we've proven we can do it even when everything was working against us. Our friends throw us a party 3 weeks later to celebrate how far we've come. Josephine organizes everything at her house with a backyard full of string lights and a table covered in food everyone brought. People who supported us through the nightmare show up with genuine smiles, hugging both of us and saying how good it is to see us actually happy together. Alex stands up halfway through the evening and taps his beer bottle to get everyone's attention. He thanks everyone for sticking with us and believing in our marriage when things looked impossible. Then he specifically calls out Nathan for driving down that night and refusing to let Chloe's lies destroy what we built together. His voice cracks a little when he says he doesn't know where we'd be without his brother's intervention. Nathan raises his own beer from across the yard, and people cheer, and I feel this warmth spread through my chest watching our actual support system surrounding us. The party goes late into the night with people sharing stories and laughing, and it feels amazing to be part of normal social gathering again, instead of isolated in our own crisis. Nathan and his wife and their 2 kids visit for Thanksgiving, driving down the Wednesday before and staying through the weekend. I watch Alex and Nathan in the kitchen Thursday morning, both of them arguing about the right way to season the turkey like they probably did growing up. Nathan's kids run around the house with Cooper chasing them, and Alex gets down on the floor to play with his nephew, making silly voices and building block towers. His ease with his brother and the natural flow of family memories they share while cooking shows me how much of himself he's truly reclaimed. They joke about childhood disasters and teenage mistakes, finishing each other's sentences and laughing at inside jokes that don't need explanation. Nathan's wife pulls me aside while we're setting the table and tells me she's amazed at Alex's recovery, that she honestly wasn't sure they'd see him back to himself. Watching him now, laughing while he helps his niece put marshmallows on the sweet potatoes, he seems more present and more genuinely himself than he's been in over a year. Some details might stay fuzzy forever, but the core of who Alex is has definitely come back. We start having serious conversations about our future during quiet evenings after work, the kind of planning we put completely on hold during his recovery. Alex brings up kids one night while we're doing dishes, asking if I still want to try for a family, or if everything that happened changed how I feel about it. I tell him I do want kids, but I want us to be solid first, to make sure we're both ready and stable before adding that kind of pressure. We talk about timelines and what our 5-year plan looks like now, discussing career goals and whether we want to stay in this house or eventually move somewhere bigger. These conversations feel grounded in actual reality, in what we both genuinely want, rather than some fantasy version Chloe tried to force onto Alex's vulnerable state. We make plans to take a financial planning class together and start seriously saving for a bigger down payment if we decide to move. Talking about the future doesn't feel scary anymore because we're doing it together with clear heads and honest communication. Alex admits he wants to wait another year before trying for kids, wanting to be completely confident in his memory and stability first. I agree completely because we've learned the hard way that rushing major life decisions when we're not ready only creates more problems. Our actual anniversary arrives in early December, and Alex tells me to pack a bag for the weekend, but won't say where we're going. He drives us 3 hours to the beach where he proposed 4 years ago, booking us into the same little hotel we stayed at back then. We walk down to the sand Friday evening as the sun starts setting and the cold wind whips my hair around while waves crash against the shore. Alex takes my hand and leads me to the exact spot where he got down on one knee years ago, and I feel tears starting before he even says anything. He tells me he remembers the proposal now, remembers being so nervous his hands shook while he tried to get the ring out of his pocket. He remembers how excited and terrified he felt asking me to marry him, scared I might say no even though we'd talked about marriage before. Standing here now with the ocean behind us and the sky turning orange and pink, he says he'd choose me all over again every single day for the rest of his life. We stay on the beach until it gets too cold, then go back to the hotel and order room service and watch old movies curled up together. The whole weekend feels like reclaiming something precious that Chloe tried to steal, creating a new memory in this meaningful place that's completely ours. We complete our final therapy session with Evan the week after we get back from the beach. He tells us we've done the hard work of not just surviving trauma, but actively healing from it together, which a lot of couples never manage after betrayal this deep. Evan reminds us we'll probably always carry some scars from what happened, moments when something triggers the fear or anger from those months. But those scars are proof of our strength and commitment to each other, evidence that we fought for our marriage when it would have been easier to give up. He gives us tools for handling future rough patches, and reminds us that continuing to communicate honestly is what will keep us strong. Alex shakes Evan's hand and thanks him for helping us rebuild when everything felt broken beyond repair. Walking out of that office for the last time feels like graduating from something difficult, like we've completed this intensive program in saving our marriage, and now we get to just live it. Life settles into a comfortable new normal over the following weeks and months. We're both more present with each other, putting phones away during dinner and actually talking about our days instead of just existing in the same space. We're more communicative about everything, checking in about feelings and plans and making sure we're on the same page. Most importantly, we're more grateful for what we have, never taking for granted that we get to wake up next to each other every morning. We learned the hardest way possible that our marriage can withstand deliberate sabotage and medical crisis, and that knowledge makes us stronger and more confident in our future together. Some evenings I catch Alex looking at me with this expression of wonder, like he's amazed we actually made it through everything that tried to destroy us. I feel exactly the same way about him and about us, grateful every single day that we fought hard enough to reclaim what Chloe tried to steal. Cooper sleeps between us most nights and we take him on long walks where we talk about everything and nothing. We host Nathan's family for Christmas and laugh around our table with people who genuinely love us. We make plans and dream about the future and build our life back piece by piece, stronger than it was before because we know exactly what we're capable of surviving together.